My sister stood up in court and screamed, "She's just a homeless veteran!" The words hit like a grenade in a room full of polished shoes and cold stares. I didn't flinch. I just watched her, my own blood, try to strip me of every ounce of dignity I had left. Then I stood, walked to the judge's bench, and placed one paper in front of him. He read it once, looked up, and said, "Lock the doors. No one leaves this room." That's when everything changed. Before I tell you how it got that far, hit like and drop a comment. Where are you listening from tonight? Tell me if you've ever had to fight your own family for the truth. When I stepped out of the cab that morning, the air smelled like rain and dust, the kind that sticks to your boots and memories. 1450 Windmere Lane stood exactly where it always had, but the warmth I remembered was gone. The porch light flickered above the door, not in welcome, but like a warning. There was a new keypad on the gate, new locks, a for sale sign tilted in the yard, its corner caught in the wind. I stood there in uniform discharge papers still in my bag, 25 years of service, folded neatly inside. I thought I'd come home. Instead, my sister's voice came through the intercom, sharp, rehearsed. "You can't be here, Willow. This isn't your house anymore." For a second, I thought she was joking. I even smiled. Delilah opened the gate. "I just want to see Mom. She doesn't want to see you. None of us do." Her words sliced cleaner than any blade I'd handled in the field. I tried again, quieter this time. "I just want to talk." Delilah hesitated. Then she said the line that sealed it. "You left. You disappeared. You're not in the will." 10 minutes later, a patrol car rolled up. The younger officer checked the documents Delilah handed him. "Property belongs to a Richard and Delilah Thatcher," he said. The older one looked at me, eyes narrowing when he saw the insignia on my jacket. "Lieutenant Lockach," I nodded. He sighed. "Ma'am, I'm sorry, you'll have to leave." The gate clicked shut, steel against steel, and the sound lodged itself somewhere in my chest. I walked back to the sidewalk, the same one where my grandfather once taught me Morse code, ..truth. Now all I could read was silence. That night, I sat in my car 2 blocks away. The house glowed amber through the trees, familiar yet foreign. Every window was lit, but not for me. The people inside my family moved on without looking back. I stayed until dawn, watching the light fade, remembering the last words my grandfather ever told me before he died. "Every lie leaves a trace, Willow. Even family lies." I didn't know it yet, but he was right, and the traces they left behind were about to burn. The next morning, I found myself in a cafe off Jefferson Street, the kind with burnt coffee and quiet corners where bad news lands softly. Ruth Clay was already there, hair pinned back, dark blazer, same sharp focus she had back in college when she argued every point like her life depended on it. She didn't hug me. She just slid a tablet across the table. "Thought you should see this," she said. On the screen was a property listing, 1450 Windmere Lane, my grandfather's house, listed under Ravencrest Holdings, LLC. I blinked, trying to process. That's impossible. Ruth zoomed in on the seller line. My name was there, signed in black ink, neat and clean. "That's not my signature." "I know," she said quietly. "It's forged. Notary stamp traces back to someone suspended last year for falsifying documents." The room tilted for a second as if gravity had forgotten me. "So they didn't just take it," I whispered. "They built an entire lie to make it look legal." Ruth's eyes softened, but her tone stayed steady. "Your sister's husband, Brian Calloway, he's listed as the logistics contact for Ravencrest. And your father's name appears on several payment approvals." The words "payment approvals" hit harder than any gunfire I'd heard overseas. My own blood had turned my life into paperwork. I sat back, staring out the window at the street, the people walking past with coffee cups and laughter, normal lives untouched by betrayal. "My grandfather told me the house would be mine," I said. He said it to my face. "Day before he died." "Then there should be proof," Ruth said. "An earlier will. Maybe an audio record, email, letter, something. Something inside me clicked. My old laptop. Years ago, I digitized his files, saved everything in a backup drive labeled Family Archive. I hadn't looked at it since deployment. Ruth leaned forward. If you can find even one inconsistency, timestamps, handwriting, financial logs, it's enough to reopen the case. I nodded slowly. I'll find it. By the time I left the cafe, the shock had cooled into something sharper. Betrayal had always been a story you heard about other people, until it wasn't. As I walked back to my car, the wind picked up, carrying the smell of rain and asphalt. I tightened my coat and thought of Delilah's voice, how cold and certain she'd sounded. "They think I won't fight back," I murmured. "They've already forgotten who taught me how to fight." That night, I dug through boxes stacked in my small apartment, metal tins, old drives, notebooks that smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Every sound felt louder than it should have been. I found the hard drive buried beneath an old service jacket labeled Family Archive, in my grandfather's shaky handwriting. When the screen lit up, his voice echoed in my memory, "Every lie leaves a trace." It didn't take long to find the first one. The digital copy of his will, signed, dated, witnessed. The name on it was mine, but when I compared it to the one Delilah's lawyer had filed, the signatures didn't match. Theirs looked perfect. Too perfect. Machine smooth. By midnight, my desk was covered in printouts, highlighted lines and notes scribbled in the margins. I wasn't just grieving anymore. I was investigating. The next morning, Ruth called. I reached out to an old contact, someone who might help us trace the money trail. Ex-Cyber Command, Isaac Ng, I said, before she could finish. She paused. "You still trust him?" "With my life," I said. "He's the one who taught me to see what people hide." An hour later, Isaac and I were on a secure call. His voice hadn't changed, steady, practical, just enough sarcasm to sound alive. "Long time Lockach," he said. "You always did attract trouble." "Not this kind," I said. "This time it's blood deep." He started running traces through the accounts tied to Ravencrest Holdings. Within minutes, the names appeared like ghosts: Brian Calloway, Richard Lockach, hidden behind shell invoices and fake service payments. "Your sister's husband moves the money," Isaac said. "Your father signs the authorizations." Classic internal laundering. I felt my pulse rise, not with fear, but clarity. "Can you pull the source documents?" "Already did. But Willow, be careful. These people aren't amateurs. If they know you're digging, they already know I cut in." And I was right. That evening, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You're playing with fire. We have your psych file." I stared at the screen, jaw tight. They wanted me unstable, discredited, erased again. But the soldier in me only heard a challenge. I turned off my phone, booted my laptop, and opened a secure channel to Ruth and Isaac. "We start tonight," I said. "Everything they've forged will undo line by line." As the three of us worked, I saw the pattern emerge: falsified property transfers, hidden payments, altered notarizations. Every lie was time-stamped, every deceit traceable. By sunrise, I held the one document that could end them all: the original deed, digitally verified with my grandfather's recorded statement attached. I looked at it for a long time, then slipped it into a folder. "This is it," I whispered. "One paper. That's all it takes." The courtroom was colder than I expected. Maybe it was the marble, maybe the silence, the kind that presses against your skin until you can feel your pulse in your throat. I sat straight, hands clasped the creases of my uniform, sharp as a blade. 25 years of service had taught me how to stand tall when the world tried to shrink me. Across the aisle sat the people who shared my blood. My father, Richard Crisp, in a navy suit, pretending not to see me. My sister Delilah, all pearl earrings and perfect posture. And Brian, her husband, scrolling on his phone like he was bored by justice. When the bailiff called my name, I rose. The title still sounded strange when someone else said it: Lieutenant Colonel Willow Lockach, plaintiff. For a moment, I caught my father's eyes. They were calm, too calm, the kind of calm that comes from thinking you've already won. The proceedings began. The prosecutor laid out the evidence we'd spent months building: altered payments, falsified documents, notarizations under a suspended license. Ruth sat beside me, flipping through her notes, her movements methodical. She didn't speak much, she didn't have to. The truth was heavy enough to do the talking. But the defense came armed with venom. Their lawyer painted me as unstable, a soldier, haunted by deployment, unfit to manage property, incapable of distinguishing loyalty from paranoia. They called me erratic, bitter, a woman who can't move on. And then Delilah stood up. "She's just a homeless veteran," she shouted, voice cracking through the courtroom. The words hit like shrapnel, echoing off the walls. The judge banged his gavel, calling for order, but the damage was done. Every whisper, every pair of eyes turned toward me. I didn't speak. I didn't even blink. I let her finish digging her own grave. When the silence returned, I rose. "Your Honor," I said quietly, "may I approach?" He hesitated, then nodded. I walked to the bench, heels clicking against the floor. Every step felt deliberate, final. When I reached him, I laid a single folder on his desk. "One document," I said, "from the original estate registry, verified by federal audit." He opened it, scanned the pages, then looked up. His expression changed, first confusion, then recognition, then something closer to disbelief. He tapped his gavel once. "Lock the doors," he said. "No one leaves this room." The entire courtroom froze. The bailiff moved to the doors, sealing them shut. Delilah's jaw slackened. Brian looked up from his phone, color draining from his face. My father sat perfectly still, the mask cracking in slow motion. The judge spoke again, voice firm. "These documents show a forged deed, falsified transfer payments, and unauthorized use of a military ID. The signatures on file do not match verified exemplars, and the authorization trail leads directly to you, Mr. Lockach." My father didn't deny it. He simply exhaled and turned his face away. Mom, seated behind them, trembled. Her hand covered her mouth, her eyes wet. Delilah's lips parted, but no sound came. The same voice that had once called me a homeless veteran now could barely breathe. Ruth stood beside me, calm, collected, the kind of presence you only notice when you realize she's the one holding the room steady. "Your Honor," she said, "we have corroborating evidence of interstate financial fraud and coercion, all verified through federal channels." The judge nodded slowly. "So noted. The court will recess briefly for verification." He left. The air didn't move. No one spoke. My father's attorney leaned over, whispering urgently, but Richard just stared ahead. Finally, he turned his head toward me. "You didn't have to do this," he said softly. "Family stays quiet." "Family doesn't steal," I replied. Delilah broke, then tears sliding through the makeup she'd spent hours perfecting. "It was Dad's idea. He said you wouldn't care. You were gone. You had your career." I didn't answer. I'd already given her too much air to breathe. When the judge returned, his tone was clipped, precise, merciless. "This court finds sufficient evidence of fraud, forgery, and willful misrepresentation. The estate at 1450 Windmere Lane will be restored to the rightful heir pending criminal charges for the defendants." He looked at me. "Lieutenant Lockach, do you wish to address the court before sentencing?" I hesitated. Every version of anger I'd swallowed over the past year rose in my chest. But when I finally spoke, my voice was calm. "I spent my life fighting enemies I never saw," I said. "People I was told to fear. But the real war started the day my own family tried to erase me. I'm not here for revenge. I'm here for truth." Silence. The judge nodded, once eyes steady. "Then justice will follow." He turned to the defendants. Delilah Thatcher, 6 years. Brian Calloway, 8. Richard Lockach, 10. No parole. The gavel fell. No one moved. I watched my father's shoulders slump. My sister's face drain of color, my mother cover her eyes. The sound of cuffs clicking was soft, almost merciful. When they led them out, Delilah looked back one last time, her mouth trembling. I didn't meet her eyes. As the courtroom emptied, one veteran in the audience, a stranger, maybe 70, stood up, nodding once in my direction. "We don't stay erased," he said quietly. I nodded back. Outside, the wind was sharp, but it didn't sting. I walked down the courthouse steps, folder in hand, the paper that had cost me everything but given me back my name. They called me a homeless veteran, but you can't lose your home when it's built on truth. The news spread fast, faster than I expected. By the next morning, local headlines read, "Veteran exposes family fraud in courtroom showdown." I didn't read the full articles. I didn't need to. The verdict spoke louder than any interview ever could. Delilah was sentenced to 6 years for document forgery and obstruction. Brian got 8 for laundering through fake logistics accounts. My father, Willow Lockach, the man who taught me how to salute before I could spell my own name, was handed 10 years for orchestrating the scheme. No parole. Mom didn't speak during sentencing. When I saw her outside the courtroom, she was smaller somehow, shoulders hunched beneath a pale coat. She reached for me, then stopped halfway, her hand trembling in the air. I didn't know she whispered. I looked at her hand, then at her eyes. Maybe not. But you didn't want to know either. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. Some truths don't need volume, they only need light. A week later, I visited 1450 Windmere Lane one last time. The front gate hung open now, police tape fluttering in the wind. The hydrangeas my grandmother planted had somehow survived, pushing through dirt that had been trampled by greed. I knelt beside them, brushing soil from the petals. "I kept your promise, Grandpa," I murmured. Every lie left a trace. I just followed them home. I didn't reclaim the house. I donated it to a veterans foundation that helps soldiers rebuild their lives. Let someone else find peace there, someone who still needed an address to start over. That night, I stood by the ocean, the sky streaked with gray and silver. The horizon felt endless, untamed, exactly how freedom should feel. For the first time in years, I wasn't fighting anyone. I wasn't defending myself. I was just still. Justice, I realized, doesn't roar. It settles. They called me a homeless veteran, but that was never true. I was never homeless. I was just unwelcome in the place I helped build. And sometimes that hurts worse than any battlefield wound. But I learned something in that courtroom home isn't 4 walls or a name on a deed. It's the truth you refuse to bury. I walk differently now, lighter. I don't carry bitterness, only memory. Every person who tried to erase me has to live with the echo of their own lies, and that's punishment enough. People ask if I regret taking them to court. The answer's simple no, because silence doesn't protect the innocent. It protects the guilty. So if you're listening and you've ever been told to stay quiet or let it go, don't. Speak. Shine light where they told you not to look. They thought they took my home. But what they really did was give me a story worth telling. If this hit close to home, drop a comment below. Tell me where you're watching from and what truth you'd fight for. And hit subscribe because the next story might be yours.